Good to be back here on the Urban Debate. Good to have you back on the primetime show on Mirror Now as well. Thank you for joining us, viewers. Before we go on to the big conversation tonight and discuss about the way forward with the lockdown having been extended to the 3rd of May, I want to first begin with what's happened in Mumbai this afternoon. And that was a massive scare for a couple of hours, a complete violation of the lockdown, a big problem for the state government. We saw thousands of migrants living in and around the suburban area of Bandra come out on streets, gather around one of the railway stations demanding that they be sent home. Now they claim that in the light of the lockdown being extended, there is absolutely no way for them to stay back. Those visuals that emerged really got everybody's attention. The police had to resort to dispersing them with some amount of lathi charge as well. Santhya is joining me with the latest. Santhya, let's begin from when this started and what happened.
So Tanvi, post the announcement of lockdown extension at around 3:30 today afternoon, around 2,000 migrant laborers gathered outside Bandra railway station. And these are the ones who actually live in a slum right outside Bandra station. So within a span of 3 to 4 minutes, there were around 500 people initially out on the road. That's what Mumbai police say. And this is exactly how it happened as per Mumbai police. There was this one fake news which made rounds on the social media, specifically WhatsApp, which the people living in that slum area, these migrant laborers, received. And that WhatsApp message read that how there will be one train which will leave from Bandra railway station, which will take these migrant laborers to their respective states. That's why they came outside on the road. So by the time police reached, police started talking to them and police tried to convince them to stay indoors, and police offered them ration. In fact, one food truck was called at the spot and police started distributing ration. But by that time, the total
Well, we seem to have lost that line with Santhya. Those are the visuals that show you what really happened. And this, of course, is when the crowd actually began to disperse. Before that, they were all sitting there. They said they don't have food, they don't have money, they want to go home. Unfortunately, what also happened is while the local authorities and the police managed to actually disperse the crowd, it led to a blame game between the state government, the Maha Aghadi alliance leaders and the union government and the BJP, with the BJP pointing fingers at Maha Aghadi for failing to really take care of the migrants in the city of Mumbai, with the Maha Aghadi leaders actually saying that it's the union government that's not managed to come up with a comprehensive plan of what to do with the migrants and how to send them home. But suddenly the fact that so many of them emerged and actually came out on the streets really begs the question, what happened suddenly? Is it the announcement of the extension or was there something more at play? Santhya, the political blame game that started out after this incident was really unfortunate.
Absolutely, Tanvi. In fact, as per Mumbai police, as of now, it doesn't look like that there was any political backing which was behind this. But one thing which Mumbai police also says that it was actually the announcement of lockdown extension that spread panic among the slum dwellers, among the migrant laborers which were living in that slum. And that's something they told the cops. In fact, when cops tried to pacify them by distributing ration, actually 500 of them accepted and returned to their shanties. But rest of them were insisting on only one thing, that they should be allowed to go back to their respective states. They can't live anymore in Mumbai like this. In fact, some of them went ahead and said that if there's no train, because that was the fake news in the beginning, which actually led to people coming out. They said that even if there is no mode of transportation, they'll walk it out like other migrant laborers. Police tried to pacify them, and in fact, they try and take help of local community leaders also. Announcements were made on the speaker of the nearby mosque as well. But the crowd did not budge. In fact, unfortunately, according to Mumbai police, some of the protesters started misbehaving with the cops as well. That's exactly why police had to lathi charge, police had to apply the force. But suddenly it took more than 2.5 hours for Mumbai police to control that crowd and disperse that crowd despite lathi charge also. So one thing which cops are also mentioning while they're talking to us, that they understand that how it's the announcement of lockdown extension which has spread the panic among people. They don't know how to survive in the city anymore. And one thing which the authorities are doing is providing them food, but as of now, that is not pacifying the people who are living in Mumbai, the migrant laborers. Tanvi.
Well, one thing is for sure, Santya, either somebody prompted them, or if they didn't, if they were not prompted or provoked, then that just goes on to show that they don't have enough food and they don't have enough money, and wherever they are being put up on these in these shelter homes is not really working out for them. There is absolutely no other reason why so many of them collectively suddenly will actually get out and gather in such a manner. So we're going to keep a close eye. Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray is likely to speak on the situation in Maharashtra. Let's see if he actually addresses this issue as well. Thanks, Anthea, so much for joining us with the latest. Now, let's move on to the big conversation tonight here at 8 p.m. Prime Minister Modi earlier in the day, viewers, made the announcement that the lockdown will be extended till 3rd of May. Now, the next 1 week is going to be extremely crucial, where he said that the implementation of the lockdown will be stricter, and after April 21st, basis how the situation develops, they may take a call on relaxing some of the restrictions in areas that don't have too many cases. That being said, what's the way forward? There are a few crucial sectors we still need to watch out for. You and I still need to get our essential goods. You and I still need to get our medicines, our fruits and vegetables and staples and everything that's required, even though we are in a lockdown and inside our homes. Food and medicines, how does that supply continue? Will there be any challenges there? Secondly, what about the farm sector? What about the farmers? What needs to be done on priority basis to ensure that their interests are safeguarded, their livelihood is safeguarded? Thirdly, the business sector. Now, the industry has made a series of representations to the government of where all some amount of relaxation and relief can be given outside of the essential goods. What else can be given some relief? Otherwise, what will be the impact on the industry? How bad is it going to get impacted? Are some of the questions we are going to try and address, or at least discuss in the next 40 minutes here on this show. Let's say good evening to the panelists. In fact, before we go across to our panelists, let's listen into that excerpt of the big announcement that Prime Minister Modi made today. Here is PM Modi from this morning.
सारे सुझावों को ध्यान में रखते हुए ये तय किया गया है कि भारत में लॉकडाउन को अब 3 मई तक और बढ़ाना पड़ेगा। यानी 3 मई तक हम सभी को, हर देशवासी को लॉकडाउन में ही रहना होगा। 20 अप्रैल तक हर कस्बे, हर थाने, हर जिले, हर राज्य को बड़ी बारीकी से परखा जाएगा। जो क्षेत्र इस अग्नि परीक्षा में सफल होंगे, वहां पर 20 अप्रैल से कुछ जरूरी गतिविधियों की अनुमति, छूटछाट दी जा सकती है।
Straight up, let's go across to Dr. Niranjan Hiranandani, president of the apex industry body ASSOCHAM, and also the co-founder and managing director of Hiranandani Group of Companies. Dr. Hiranandani, while the entire nation really supports the decision of extending the lockdown, whatever needs to be done to defeat coronavirus, what should the government be looking at in terms of ensuring that the essential supplies are managed and some amount of support is also given to the business houses, at least the small businesses?
You're absolutely correct. What was expected was twofold. There was expected that there would be a partial lift up of the lockdown, and this was already announced by the Commerce Ministry at the central level in terms of recommendations as to how it should be done. And we were expecting that some of the essential factories, as well as the issues in terms of construction workers, like you saw the migrant workers just now in Bandra. Actually, there are lakhs of workers in Mumbai who are actually on the construction sites, actually sitting right next to the construction sites. And we are looking after them, we are feeding them, but there is a lot of upsetness in them that the work has not started. And we had a very difficult time today trying to pacify them that even though we give them food, we sanitize their place, we are looking after them, we check their temperatures every day. But they are very, very disturbed that there is no work which is given to them. So we are finding it extremely difficult to handle the construction workers, the migrant workers in Mumbai, at least is difficult. Number two, many of them have got some work in the farming sector because this is the time for harvesting as well as for sowing seeds for the next harvest. So there is an expectation among the workers that if they went back, at least they would be able to work a little bit on the farms, etc. Now, this is contrary to what we want them. We don't want them to be traveling at this point of time outside Mumbai and going back to the villages. So that's a very major problem of construction workers, at least who are staying on the sites, and we are looking after them properly. The second part which you mentioned about is the economic package in terms of what we wanted to as a stimulus package to the economy. I think especially the MSMEs and the small people are really in a bad shape. They've managed to somehow manage the month of March by paying their workers and looking after them. But I don't think they have most of them, 90% don't have the capacity to carry on for another month. So I think somewhere an economic package is necessary to be announced very quickly, and also several packages in terms of how we can compete with the rest of the world. As you know, China has come back into force, and but our economic package has not been announced. I think that is also necessary. I'm told that the finance minister is likely to announce it any day in the near future, but I think the expectations is a lot. And it's difficult for an SMEs to make a commitment to their workforce or their staff that they will continue to give money if there is no support at all from the government. So I think the economic package should also come very quickly. And I think that's an expectation that is there, especially for SMEs, especially for business, I think is now necessary. A lot of people have a lot of difficulty. And the last part is that Reserve Bank of India also needs to come up with a one-time rollover of the debts which are there. They have given some pacifiers for 3 months, but it's now very clear that the period of sufferance is going to be longer, even though the lockdown will be lifted. So I think an economic package in terms of a one-time rollover from the Reserve Bank is called for very quickly. There was a hint of that from the RBI, but I think it's time to really do it. This and a couple of other things are needed in order to pacify the people.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Hiranandani. I know you're talking about an economic package. What really can be done at this point of time? I understand when economic activity begins again. I understand when we are out of the lockdown and we are looking at restarting businesses, and some amount of boost and help is needed at that point of time. What is the industry expecting right now from the government when you say an economic package?
There are 3 points that we have asked for. Point number one is that we have asked for a 50% cut in GST, which will benefit the entire demand of the sector of the entire economy. So whether they buy a newspaper, put an advertisement, go to a restaurant, go to a cinema ticket, travel around, have tourism, go to a hotel, we are asking for a 6-month reduction of GST by 50%. The second thing is that all the dues by the government owes money in terms of refund of income tax, in terms of VAT refunds. The National Highway Authority of India is to make payments to all the contractors. DISCOM payments have not been made. Fertilizer subsidies have not been made. State governments have not been paid. Maharashtra government is paying salaries in 2 installments. And all these amounts which are dues by the central and state government at least should be made payment. These are almost 2 lakh crores of rupees which are overdue from the central government and the state government. And I think if that package is started, at least that will be the beginning of some kind of relief, plus a sabbatical for 6 months in terms of GST. And the last important point is that, and I believe this is coming very soon, is that the NCLT law should be suspended for 6 months because otherwise all the companies will go into liquidation. And recently we found a foreign company foreclosing on an Indian company, which would be taken over by a foreign company otherwise. So, and luckily the Mumbai High Court made a stay on that. So all these are economic packages which are required to be announced. Even if they do implement it over a period of time, once they announce it, then the business and industry can follow it through in a proper manner. But an announcement of the fiscal package is equally required in order to make all these people satiated.
Okay. Please do stay on with us. Let's also say good evening to Professor Santosh Mehrotra. Professor Mehrotra, thank you for joining us. You know, just a short while ago, there's this a set of projections about the world growth that was released by the IMF. Now, while for many countries we are looking at a straight degrowth or recession, you know, a negative growth, for India they've pegged the growth at 1.9% for this year. While the larger economic battle will be fought once COVID is done, hopefully the lockdown is lifted in a few weeks from now. But for now, what is it that the government needs to do to ensure that, you know, we are able to sustain basic supply and able to take care of people in the next few weeks?
First of all, I think what we need is that of the migrant. Honestly, while Delhi government is doing a great deal in this regard, the Kerala government is doing a great deal in this regard. Most other state governments are simply not coming up to scratch. In addition, I think if we members of the Economic Advisory.
Okay, we seem to have some audio issues with you, Professor Santosh Mehrotra. Technology has been giving us a tough time for the last couple of days. We've somehow managed to come back and put together this this very important discussion. I actually also want to just say that thank you to all of our panelists, you know, for getting on board with all kinds of technology experiments we are doing to ensure that we also maintain social distancing, don't send across too many live view units, reduce interaction, and get them via various technology apps that are currently available. Mr. Hiranandani, if I can just come back to you on one specific aspect, what we saw unfold in Mumbai this afternoon was thousands of migrant workers who are currently obviously out of job, dependent on the government for food and shelter, wanted to go back home. Now in Mumbai, we've actually not seen much of a problem so far until today. Is there something that the business sector and the private industry can also do here? Because the government, whatever they've done, doesn't seem to have worked. These people are now losing patience.
See, the point is very simple. If it's a question of giving food, we are already giving it. If we are taking care of the workers who are on our sites, a lot of migrant people, there are NGOs who are working very hard and distributing food to all these migrant workers and poor people. But remember, these people are believing that these jobs are not going to come back to them because the economic side of the city is dying. So the difficulty is that they are not confident that they will get work even after the lockdown gets removed because the economic package is not there. So no businessman is giving confidence to these people and assuring them that they will be getting jobs when the whole thing comes back. So obviously they are thinking of going back to their village, maybe working part-time on the farms so that they are more, at least they'll get food and they will live comfortably. In Mumbai, up till now, this story was never there because nobody slept without food in Mumbai. The city never slept, and anybody who worked hard in the city, the poorest of poor, got 2 meals to eat. So now with this loss of confidence in the city, a lot of people want to leave the city because they are not too sure about the economic comeback rather than anything else. I am with Prime Minister Modi completely that the lockdown needed to be extended. And I'm sure that all these thoughts have been done very correctly, and I support him 100%. But simultaneously, you need to look after the economic situation of the people as well as business. And I think this is some imperative that we need to put on the track very, very quickly. That confidence on the economic side is not coming. That confidence on the health side, I think, is there by the people and very, very confident.
There is also another factor, isn't there? You know, right now they fear that they may not get these jobs back, so they might as well go back home. And once they do, and those who have gone home, Mr. Hiranandani, it will also be a challenge to get them back once the lockdown lifts. Is that a big concern for the industry as well?
Well, not at this point of time. To be honest with you, we have so many construction workers who are there on our sites. There are so many of them. On my personal site, I have 4,000 workers that we are looking after. We could do with 1,000 more once the work really starts. So we may not get the balance 1,000. But these 4,000 can be put on job immediately, and they are living right next to the project site. Similarly, a lot of important work for the monsoon remains to be done. We have to take care of proper stormwater drains, construction works of roads and other things to be completed. All such important works are required to be completed before the monsoon. Many of the buildings' basements have been excavated. They are in a dangerous position if these works are not completed before the monsoon. So I think somewhere down the line, it would be necessary after the 20th to put this economic activity, especially those workers who are still there living right next to the sites or living within the factories or living next to the factories. I think they need to be put on the job, because it's possible on the construction side when they are working to do this social distancing, to take the temperatures, look after all the facility.
Right. Okay, let me also just tell our viewers just what Maharashtra Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray has said. As we speak, he has made this comment on the migrant issue, and he said that people thought that from April 14th, the train services will be resumed. So they gathered at the Bandra station. They felt that on April 14 trains will start. They believed so. I am now speaking to the center. Lockdown doesn't mean it's jail. I am in contact with the center. Don't politicize this issue. I know he says don't politicize this issue, but his leaders, including Aditya Thackeray and Priyanka Chaturvedi and many Congress leaders, have already put the onus on the central government for what's actually happened in Mumbai today, without taking responsibility on why they have not been able to address these issues. But let me go across to Mr. Avik Saha. I believe we have him with us. Good evening, Mr. Saha. Thank you for being with us. Let's also talk a bit about the farm sector and what needs to be done there on priority in the middle of an harvest season here.
Let's be very clear that the government doesn't know what to do because it has never faced this situation. There is no standard to follow. There is no precedence to adopt. Now, having said that, what I find a little disturbing, and I'm sure everybody feels the same, is that the government didn't seem to have a checklist of all the things that it needs to, all the sectors that it needs to deal with. And that is the main problem. With regard to farming, the complete connectivity has broken down. I read all the notifications issued by all the state governments and the Home Ministry every day. Of course, on paper, everything is all right. But currently, I'm in West Bengal. And if you move, one district away from the city of Calcutta, you will see that the connectivity has collapsed. So in the countryside, there is a great worry. What is even more worrisome is that the credit cycle in the villages is slowly collapsing. The small village shop is not getting credit from the wholesaler. He's not giving credit to the villager. So we are looking at a complete economic squeeze. No sale, no money in hand, no credit in the shops that you usually buy your groceries from. I don't know what to say. And these are the things that that could have been thought of. I'm not saying all of them could have been solved, but nobody seems to have thought about it. And this is my concern, my anger, and I'm sure people across the classes are feeling the same, that why is the government, and I don't mean the political government, there is also the administrative government. The political government may wish well for the people, they have to think about people because they get elected. But the administrative government seems to have been in slumber And now they're waking up and trying to react to things when people are short, the number of staff in government offices is short, money is short, too many crises are built up, and overall there is a complete mess with regard to farming and the rural sector.
Okay, but several times this has been mentioned by the central government officials and the state government that we are trying to directly source from the farmers itself, that we will look at incentivizing, firms to directly market and directly buy from the farmers. Would you then say that we are moving way too quickly, way too slowly, and the significant amount of damage has already been done? Is that what you're saying?
When it comes to agri-products, currently we are looking at two problems. One is the problem of the crop, the cereal crop that will come into the market in the next 7, 10, 15 days. It differs, from state to state, but let's say some of it has come and most of it is due in 2 weeks. How that will be purchased is a big crisis. The Telangana government has issued a GO that will purchase every dana of crop, etc., etc. We have to see what happens. The second crisis is not about the cereal crops, but about the vegetable crops, the perishable crops. So that's where the main problem is, because in a district called Purulia in West Bengal, there are farmers with fields of watermelons and cucumbers which are just rotting on the field, and there's nothing they can do about it. So this is the farmer who has borrowed money, is hoping to earn money and repay his loans, watching his entire crop sitting and rotting in the field and can't lift a finger to do anything about it. The crisis that this kind of farmer is facing, the perishable farmer, the milk farmer, the fisherman, things that we need every day in the city for our food, that farmer is facing a crisis which is moving from hour to hour. And the other farmer of cereal crops is going to face a crisis in the coming weeks. And the government, other than a lot of paperwork, seems not to be ready. But I will be hopeful. I want to wait and see what the government can do about purchasing cereal crops. On vegetable crops, fruits, fish, milk, the government has already failed, and which is a very alarming failure, because that's also the food chain. So it's not just the farmer who's not getting price for his product or is not being able to sell the product. I want to understand going forward what will be the connectivity between the farm and the city. Where will food come from in the next 2, 3, 4 months?
Yeah, yeah, that's actually has been, largely our focus as well in the past few weeks as well. And I think I wanted to talk about that even today as we look at an extended lockdown, Mr. Mehrotra, connectivity and to ensure the continuous supply of food, essential goods. How do we ensure that doesn't get impacted?
Well, the gentleman who was speaking just before me, I think, has said his bit. He was absolutely spot on. He's understood the problem and he's articulated it. I don't see what else I can add to that. Honestly, this is the problem. If milk is being wasted, it's because there are no buyers. One, there are no transporters. Transport is locked down. And often, if fruits and vegetables are rotting, it's because there are no workers and there is no transportation. So, clearly, if milk, fruits, vegetables, crops, generally cereals, were supposed to be essential items, then the transportation for these products should have been first thought about. But we've had 3 weeks of a lockdown. I thought it would have been thought about now. It is not as though that many state governments would not have known that this is about to happen, that they are going to get an extension. So how and why this is not being permitted, boggles the mind. Really boggles the mind. It is a catastrophic failure for the farmers, for the workers. Now there are workers, migrant workers, who want to go back because this is this is the harvest season. It is not just harvest season for crops, it is the harvest season for fruits, vegetables, and milk is a constant supply thing. If workers are not there, who's going to do the work? You see, why are migrant labor in the city? The migrant labor in the city to get better wages than they would otherwise get in rural areas. Now, you lock them down, fine, lockdown was necessary, but if they have walked back to their borders, at least please arrange for them to go back to their villages after you have checked their temperature, done the testing, or you've done the quarantining. Please arrange for them to go back. Because, look, if farmers continue to hurt, demand will collapse 3 months down the road. They will have no cash to buy anything else. So, if we are hearing that the economy is going to go down to 1% growth, I believe that's an overestimate. The economy will be, for the first time probably in the history of post-independence India, will see negative growth. In other words, incomes will fall. And please remember that we were already in a situation where the economy was slowing down. When unemployment had shot up in a 6-year period from 2012 to 2018 to 30 million, and today the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council members have themselves said that it will rise by another 50 to 60 million. In other words, we are talking about 90 million people who are going to be unemployed in the country. Now, being unemployed means that they will either starve or they will have no money to buy anything other than food, which means the rest of the economy will face a zero demand. In other words, we are in a deep crisis, which to some extent certainly could have been avoided with better governance, with better planning.
Okay, no, I agree with you, but what is it that they can do? That's the question, Mr. Mehrotra. Let's begin with you. Milk is going waste, yes. Fruits and vegetables are going waste, yes. Even if it reaches the mandi, there is nobody in the money to get them to the shops.
I just spoke about it.
Even if it reaches the shops, half the time they're not able to sell it. Yes.
Precisely. So, in other words, if we are agreed, and it is already stated in the government guidelines and the notifications that these are essential commodities. So, if essential commodities don't have a primary market, primary mandi is not open, then this is a failure of the government. The primary mandi has to be open, and from there wholesalers will take it. So a limited number of wholesalers should be allowed to function, should be allowed to transport. This has to be, in other words, people have to be trusted, and the police has to be informed not to rain lathis upon them. You see, the relief package is one thing.
Yes, Mr. Mehrotra, go ahead.
Whatever relief package we've had so far, might be working in the cities to some extent where some governments are feeding people. But if you don't have your ration card, you will not get the additional 5 kilos, right? If you don't have the Jan Dhan account, you will not get that 500 rupees. So let's try and fix these problems. That's what has to be done. Of course, there are many things that need to be done in the near term in respect of MSMEs. Extend the working capital requirements of the MSMEs has to be increased to at least to the same amount for which they have loans. So suppose they have loans from NBFCs, which are term loans. They should also be given working capital loans up to a maximum of 100% of the loans that they are currently carrying, and they shouldn't be necessarily repayable before 3 to 6 months. And so these kinds of things have to happen also simultaneously on the banking side. In addition, for instance, small firms have been told that they don't need to repay their loans for a 3-month period, but NBFCs, from whom they normally borrow, from whom MSMEs normally borrow, NBFCs have not been given any 90-day moratorium on repayment. They have to still pay. So in other words, we've got a cash flow problem with the NBFCs. So the NBFCs are making a noise that, we are not receiving any payments as you have instructed. So, and how are we supposed to make payments to the banks? So this has not been thought through carefully. I'm sorry to say, repeatedly I'm having to come back to the same thing.
I agree with you. Okay, I take your point. In fact, if I can just pick up on the issue of the migrants and just go back to Mr. Saha also and ask him for his view. Mr. Saha, in fact, what we saw unfold in Mumbai today also happened in the city of Surat. And there are now some reports that there was an attempt by a few migrants even in Delhi to try and get back home today, but they were stopped. Now, obviously, what we are looking at is a situation where this set of people stuck in the cities, living in sheltered homes, and hoping to get some relief from the governments in terms of food, want to get back home. Is there a solution to this problem? Can they not be used in some of the places where we are struggling with shortage of labor right now?
As I said before, no IAS officer has experienced a nationwide lockdown. No political leader has any knowledge of how to deal with it. We must give them that. It's not all right for us to sit on TV and expect magic from them. They are learning on the job. This I will give them. What I am concerned about is that this country is not managed by chance or by luck. There is a proper management system. There is a district-wise disaster management plan. It has to be compulsorily published. It's by law. The district magistrate prepares the plan and it changes from year to year. Now, if you take, let's say, the 750 odd districts of this country, each has a district magistrate who has, in December 2019, submitted this district disaster management plan. Let's now treat this as a disaster. This disaster seems now to have flummoxed everyone so much because there was no actual implementable disaster management plans. They were all jobs. And I want to mention one thing anecdotally. On disaster management plan, I was in Supreme Court in a case called Swaraj Abhiyan versus Union of India, and we kept requesting the government that this disaster management fund is a permanent fund, which the law again mandates. The Disaster Management Act, which is now being used to threaten people with penal consequences, that act itself provides for a disaster mitigation fund. And that was not created. So we kept telling the court and the government that please create it. And the government's response was always that no, these funds were written in the law without thought. There are many government schemes which provide the same relief. So there is a question of cross-funding that is happening, and therefore we don't need the fund. Now, this has been the reaction of the government to planning. So I was not very hopeful that there would be any great planning in place. Now coming to your question on execution. Unfortunately, what's happening is that the whole migrant labor issue is something that the government was not aware of. No Babu sitting in Raisina Hill knew what to do, that there is a migrant problem. They had heard about it in the passing. So it was not, this is a problem that did not exist in any government file, and now they don't know how to deal with it. And let me tell you, what's happening in Surat, what's happened in Mumbai, and what you've heard of in Delhi. Thanks to you people, because now we only get anecdotal information. There is no way to collect and collate and analyze information. This is tip of the iceberg. You see, once desperation, whether to go back home, longing for home, or hunger, or any other factor, gets the better of people, then lathis and bullets are not deterrents. And we are pushing them, and pushing the country. Why them? It's not them versus us. We are pushing the country into a situation where management of this epidemic, which is so critical for every citizen of this country, will suddenly become a them versus us, a poor versus rich, a migrant versus city people problem. And to answer your other question regarding the supply chain and what can be done about it, the mandis are closed and so on and so forth. I can tell you one thing. If Mumbai runs out of potatoes tomorrow, within 24 hours, supply for potatoes will be arranged by the government to Mumbai. You see, I don't again want to bring this them versus us issue, but the fact is, rural India is a stepson many times removed for the government of India as compared to urban India where you and I stay. The difference are becoming starker, and it's so clear in front of your eyes as never been before.
No, yes, absolutely, Mrs. I understand the point that you're making. I know what you're really saying, and perhaps it also ties back to the fact that there are some bureaucrats who are sitting in the offices who've not seen this kind of a situation, and they're even more disconnected with what's happening in the rural areas right now. So yes, there was a situation in Mumbai where the APMC had shut down over the weekend, and we were all given a warning and forewarning by the authorities that there could be a possibility where we run out of fresh fruits and vegetables in the coming few days. It led to a lot of panic buying, but the authorities moved quickly to resolve the issue and find alternate solutions. Perhaps would not have happened if it was in many other parts of our country. So I get the point that you're making. Let me actually go across to Mr. Ravi Gupta, MD for Sri Krishna Rice Mills, joining us right now. Mr. Gupta, thank you. My apologies for all the technological issues we've been having, but good to have you on the show here on the Urban Debate. Mr. Gupta, there were some reports that suggested that even the rice mills and the companies and manufacturers are facing certain supply chain hurdles that could lead to a impact on the supply of food. Now, can you give us an insight into what's happening currently and what is it that you need from the government?
First of all, thank you very much for joining me. And now we are working smoothly in rice mill. We have no any problem with the making food and delivery, anything. Just we have one problem in the this situation. We have problem for packing material. We are not find too easy the packing material at all. So this is one issue only. Otherwise, we are going smoothly. We have no issue about that.
As far as the raw material coming to your mills is concerned and availability of labor is concerned, have those issues been resolved?
Labor has same issue, but not a big issue because
okay, we seem to have lost that line with Mr. Ravi Gupta, their MD of Sri Krishna Rice Mills. One important issue that he highlighted, that while the labor issue continues, but we are somehow managing with it, it's the lack of availability of packaging material that is now becoming the next big problem. Also, because initially when the lockdown was announced, packaging material wasn't under essential goods. It took a few days again for the government officials to realize that this is equally essential as the good itself. Otherwise, what will you pack it in and sell it? And how will you sell it? And so that was fixed, but clearly that seems to be a problem even for the manufacturers at this point of time. Mr. Raviksa, very quickly, if I can come back to you and speak about the farm sector again. Now, if I had to simply ask you this question, that in the next 3 weeks, basis the learnings of the last 3 weeks and the first round of lockdown, what needs to be the priority on ground for the government officials?
Food growing in the farms needs to be picked up at the farm gate, has to be brought wherever the point of sale is. If mandis can be made to work, great. if they can't be made to work at the point of consumption in the cities, and the food chain must be held sacred and unbroken. This will lead to lesser distress in the rural areas, which is largely farmers and agricultural workers, and of course, no food distress in the city. Mind you, all the food that comes out from a farm doesn't all come to the city. It also goes to rural markets. Rural people are consumers too. And this consumption chain of food must not be broken, because the government is already dealing with a virus that it can't see, and it's an invisible threat. The government should not have to deal with the other invisible threat called hunger. This is a great, great concern, and I'm seeing it slowly rising. And hunger is not something you can fight with through advertisements, geos, notifications, and television spots. So, for the government, for the people of this country, for farmers, for urban and rural consumers, I want that the food chain should now have primacy over everything else. We need to survive this. We need not to die of hunger. That's critical.
We need to not die of hunger, and those who give us our food and produce our food should not also die of hunger. So on both counts, we need to put farm sector and availability of food on priority. Mr. Avik Saha, thank you so much for joining us. Let me see if I have Mr. Gupta back on the phone line for a quick comment before we wrap this up. Mr. Gupta? Okay, we've lost that line. Mr. Santosh Mehrotra, closing comments from you before I wrap up this conversation.
My closing comment is simply this, that the government should call upon experts, and when I say government, I mean the state governments. I don't have much expectation from the central government. The state government knows who the agriculture experts are, who the experts on migration are, who the experts on employment and labor are. They need to call upon them. If the expertise doesn't exist within government, then there should be humility shown. So I'm not entirely in agreement with Mr. Saha. While I broadly agree with most of the things that he has said, I'm not in agreement with his contention that they are facing this for the first time in their lives. Well, there are always first times in your life. That means if you have the capacity and the administrative capacity to think about what might be the reaction, then if you don't have it, then go and look for the experts. Unfortunately, most governments feel threatened by experts, I'm sorry to say.
Point taken. Thank you so much, Mr. Avik Saha and Santosh Mehrotra. Always a pleasure to have you on our shows and have you as part of the conversation. We've highlighted to you various issues. Now, viewers, while the government extends the lockdown and focuses on the hotspots and the healthcare infrastructure, we also need to use the learnings from the last 3 weeks and ensure that the same problems don't continue. The problems of the migrant laborers don't explode one more time again, and we take care of them. Problems of the farm sector are addressed. Problems of the manufacturers and the entire supply chain businesses are taken care of. Now, one by one, we are now getting updates from various local authorities that they are extending the special passes that had been given for people linked to the essential goods and extending this to 3rd of May. This has to be done on a quick basis so that there is absolutely no obstruction in ensuring the basic supply of food and medicines and in taking care of those who need our help the most. Thank you so much for joining us on this conversation. Quick break. We'll be back with lots more.